the mindset conversation, right? How do we optimize our minds to think the way that we want to think, right? Because we are so inundated with a million thoughts a day. What is it? The statistic, the scientific statistic says that we have like 60,000 thoughts going through our mind a day. So how do we accomplish what we need to accomplish and be intentional about what we want to create in our lives when we have so much potential chaos going on in our minds, and so and plus the baggage that we carry around. So I am so excited to introduce Juliana and Brenda Terry to this panel, because I consider them both like deep thinkers, right? Like when we think about the conversations that we need to have, I like to have like those deep thoughts. Like let's drill, but let's drill even more. Let's like uncover what is the root of the root of the root of how do we really unravel how we can be optimized humans. So welcome Juliana, welcome Brenda. I am excited to have both of you.
Thank you.
Yay.
Well, likewise.
Awesome. 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 So we're going to get right to it. And I'm going to start with like, we are in a digital age, right? Obviously. But mental health and mental well-being is such a, it is so prevalent, right? Because we need to not only learn how to be ourselves and grow our businesses, but how do we really optimize our own mental health and well-being, especially as we're aging. Some of us here are in the aging period, right? So how do we really become our optimal selves when it comes to how we are out there in the world? So I want to start with you, Brenda. I'll start with you with talking about like how you feel like when we talk about mental health space, how do you feel the digital age has affected our mental well-being, and how do you recommend a healthy balance when it comes to technology and our mental health space?
That's such a great question. Can you hear me okay? First of all, yeah, we're good. Good. Perfect. That's such a great question, because I think, so when we talk about aging, listen, I've been around since before the internet. So I remember when there was no social media, and I'm just back from about a year and a half off. And I can tell you that it made a huge difference. So in terms of the mindset around it. So I think that with social media, when we're talking about mindset and in social media, I think that having a mindset that serves you is going to help you tremendously, because what's happening as a result of this digital age is that we are just glued to our phones. I mean, I take my phone with me wherever I go, and we are checking on those notifications, and those notifications actually do something to your brain. So now we have this little trigger that's taking place. And so we're living as we're exploring that world. I can tell you that as you're watching that feed, the first thing that happens to a lot of us is that we go into comparison, and we start looking at someone's highlight reel in all the very curated images, and we start thinking that our lives doesn't measure up to what that is. And so then that leads to self-esteem issues, self-confidence issues. And so I think that one of the things, I know that for me, what helped a lot was to be mindful of, for me, it's just one little simple thing, and that is that I'm not here to be like anybody else. And I also have, listen, I can promise you that from the waist down, I don't look like this, right? It doesn't happen like this. I put makeup on 3 times a month if I'm lucky. And so I think that it's really good to keep it in perspective, that social media is a place where people go to showcase this or that or the other, and it's not necessarily reflective of their entire life. We're looking at a little tiny bit of what their life is, and that in doing so, at the same time, keeping in mind that you're not meant to be like them. You're not supposed to be like anybody else. If you can focus on being the best you in your moment to moment experience outside of social media, you're going to feel much, much better. And by far, for sure, for me, is you put it down at some point, right? At some point, we cut it off. When you think about being able to manage sleep well, I think we can apply the same thing to social media. So have your time when you engage, and then have your time when you drop off, so that you can come back to center. Because I find that social media can really take us out of our grounding, and all of a sudden we're like up here thinking about all the things that we should be doing and how we should look and the weight we should lose and the money we should make, and in all of it, we are really disempowering ourselves. So I hope that answers your question well.
dope. That was dope. Juliana, I want to throw it over to you.
Yeah, wow, there's so much there, but I took a note here that you said 60,000 thoughts per day. I think that for me, that's probably like on a vacation day because it does feel like a lot more than that, right? And out of those thousands and thousands of thoughts, how many of those thoughts are positive, empowering thoughts? And how many of those thoughts are negative and things that are blocking us, right? So in terms of technology, the common thread I see with my coachees, as an executive coach, by the way, that's what I do. As a common thread with busy professionals is how do you balance your positive mindset with the, demands of technology? We're getting pinged and dinged from everywhere. So one of the tips that I tend to share is I understand that depending on your profession and what's going on, you have to make yourself available. But do you have an opportunity to perhaps put on do not disturb and mute notifications during those times that are really important to you, that fill your cup? So there are certain things that fill my mom cup, right? And if I don't put my phone on do not disturb, that person may encroach in that precious time with my kids, and then that's actually my fault, right? I didn't set those boundaries. I didn't take the action. I didn't, leverage technology in a way that it's going to help and empower me be successful in other pillars of my life. So really managing how you use technology to your favor instead of letting it run you, I think it's the first step.
I love that. And I
Yeah.
appreciate both of you. Like, these are so prevalent, and I'm so happy that we're having this discussion. So like, how do you feel self-awareness? You may hear that term a lot, many of you listening, and I spoke to an individual once, and I was just having a conversation with him, and I thought, and I just had to, like, I had a head tilt, like, you're not aware of yourself right now because of the conversation that we were having. And it made me think that sometimes how we think is how everybody thinks, but it's not true. So how do we help people understand what self-awareness is and the role of self-awareness, what actually it is, and how does it impact us having a healthy state of mind where we can approach the world in this, okay, I am aware of who I am and my space in this environment and how I contribute to the world around me. Brenda, I'd love to start with you on that. How do you feel what the role of self-awareness is when it comes to activating a healthy mental health space?
Thank you. And again, that's another great question. And I think it's so important. I think that any change that you want to make in your life, anything that you want to achieve begins with self-awareness. And so self-awareness is just, it really is just that. It's this little, it's a way of tuning in. So in NLP, we know it as uptime. And that means that we're actually focused on what's happening in our environment, how we're feeling about it, being aware of our thoughts, being aware of our emotions, being aware of the behaviors and the triggers to those things. And when you have that awareness, first of all, when you think about self-awareness, that's going to lead the way for things like your emotional awareness and your situational awareness as well. And so when you can have that awareness and you can tune into the things that are supporting you throughout the day, you can tune into the things that are supporting your mindset, that are supporting your health and your well-being, and the things that do not. And then you can actually do something about it, because that awareness on its own, to me, that's a huge gift, to be able to say, you know what? I know that if I've had a really stressful day, I'm really aware that the first thing I do when I get home is turn on the TV and just veg. And I forget about having a good dinner, and I forget about taking a nice bath, and I forget about spending time with the kids. And the only thing that I do is like, it's just too much. And so then now I know this is what happens at the end of a heavy day. So now before the day gets to be so much, then I can start doing something about it so that I can manage my state in such a way that when that dip would usually happen, it no longer takes place because I did something. It gives us a power. It empowers us to be able to do something about whatever potential problems are there. And also, though, self-awareness helps us identify solutions that are there as well, that when you're not in awareness, you're going to miss.
I love that. That's so true. And it's that self-check right? Like, okay, I'm not, we can't like say, okay, these are the emotions of other people around me. It's hold on, how am I contributing to those emotions, and how am I feeling about the state? Because energy transfers, right? So how we show up in a room, even if we have not said a word, people can sense that, right? People, because we are energetic beings, we can sense each other's emotions despite saying a word. So when, we can avoid lots of chaos in our lives when we are aware of how am I showing up to this situation? What can I do? So I love what you just shared. Juliana, I would love your insight on this as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, self-awareness is not that common, right? And what I always say is when you call an Uber, before you put where you're going, you need to tell it where you are. You need to give the coordinates of where you are. And that takes some self-reflection. You need time to self-reflect, to have self-awareness. What are the things that derail me? What are the things that fill my cup? What are the things that make me successful? Am I setting myself up each day to be successful? Or to Brenda's point, am I an automatic pilot and just doing the same things over and over? Sometimes I feel like we need to have a sign back here that says all things considered. And especially for us ladies that, like it or not, we most of the time are the CEOs of our homes. There's a lot to consider. And if, I've shared this broadly, my baby, she's my baby. She turned 2. And she spent 1 year and 8 months not sleeping. And when I tell you not sleeping, I tell you not sleeping. So all things considered, waking up in the morning like a zombie, how am I going to show up today? Knowing that there are pressures and there are stressors, am I self-aware that I may be setting some goals that are not realistic because of all of those things that I need to consider? Or am I comparing myself to these super moms on Instagram that, pretend to be doing it all? So I think that there's the aspirational me, right? And then there's the real me. And I think that all of those elements combined create self-awareness. And I'm going to tell you something else, Sandra. When you get this right, when you spend the 2 seconds that it takes to do that self-reflection and have that self-awareness, it's going to come across as confidence. And people are going to say, wow, you're so assertive. You're so confident. And internally, you're going to say, no, I'm just really calibrated, like Juliana told me. Now I'm ready to call my Uber.
I love that word, calibrated. No, I'm just calibrated. I might at some point. That is that's a great way of putting it, right? Just being aligned with who we are, and making assurance of how we're showing up, who we think we are, and then there's the difference between how we're received from other people. Because sometimes we may think, oh my God, I'm the best, nicest person in the whole world, but sometimes you can be showing up with maybe a slight attitude without even knowing it, right? Because we're Latinas. So we show up, we're so powerful that we exert emotion, I think, in every avenue of emotion. So, but it's really catching ourselves and saying, hey, hold on, was I off? Did I show up a little bit differently? Did I say that a little bit wrong? And not to say that we should be self-critical of every single thought, but we should be aware of how we are received from others, and how shifting some of that can change how we are received from others. And that is the beauty of, at the core of what self-awareness kind of is for me, is that just being aware of how we show up in different spaces. Brenda, you are a master NLP trainer, and so much to the table, and we're going to be doing so much. For those of you who are interested in NLP, we're going to be doing some NLP trainings throughout United Latinas, courtesy of Brenda. We're going to be working that, and that's going to be inside our Mighty Hub, so make sure you join for that. But because of that, you bring so much depth into our psyche, into our intellect, and to why we do the things that we do. So I would love for you to kind of explain to us a little bit of that, and kind of some of just kind of give us what NLP is, first of all, for a background of what people don't know.
That's always a really good question, because a lot of people always ask, well, what's LP? I'm like, well, it's NLP, but we'll get to that. And I think that it's getting, people are getting to know it more and more. So for me, I can just start by saying, first of all, learning NLP changed my life. There's learning it as in, book learning it. And then there's learning it as in, I'm diving in and I'm going to just live here. And that's how I live it. So I live it, I breathe it, I embody it, I teach it. The majority of the people that I teach are people who are also helping other people. So the majority of the people who are learning NLP in my programs are also coaches and consultants, strategists, because it just helps. So neurolinguistic programming is a really practical approach to understanding how it is that we communicate with ourselves and then also with the world around us. So it's communication with self and being aware of what that is, which speaks to self-awareness. And then also how it is that we communicate with others. And so there's a presupposition in NLP that says the meaning of communication is a response you get. And so that speaks specifically as to how we use our communication to either further our relationships or block them. So at its core, NLP really explores the way that our thoughts, our language, and how those two then together create our emotional and behavior patterns as well. And there's this relationship that's always taking place. So it is like this, for me, what I found it to be was it was like a very much a user manual for how I do things and being able to be aware of the way that I do things, whether or not those things serve me or not. Because when it's utilized really well, and when people actually learn the different models, so there's different models in NLP for the things that you want to achieve. I mean, one of the biggest things is going to be about state management, and how is it that you can train your mind to be able to manage stress, to overcome things like fear, especially in the moment as we're doing those things that are going to require us to do things that we're not familiar with or that we're not comfortable doing, but that are going to elevate your life. So NLP is really, really good about doing that. But essentially, I think at its core, I know, at its core, I mean, this is really what it is. It's about learning to use the power of our conscious mind, which is going to be our, here and now awareness, what we're experiencing through the senses, or the awareness of what we're experiencing through the senses. And then also then using the framework to connect and access the power of the unconscious mind, because we create our problems, let's say consciously, or consciously we can be aware of the problem, but the unconscious mind is where all the solutions are at. So when we can begin to have this open channel of communication, then your conscious and your unconscious mind can really work together to break down barriers so quickly that that's how you get to have change in your life. Well, for me, this is what I found for myself, and there's other things that work for sure. I mean, for me, it changed everything, because I'd been in therapy for 9 years, and then I went and I got my very first coaching certification in NLP, and it changed my life. Like in a week, everything in my world changed. And then I very lovingly, because I loved her, fired my therapist and decided that this was going to be the career for me. So it is about learning how to change your mind so that you can create and design those outcomes that you want in your life and enjoy having them.
I can marinate on that for like 10 minutes. I know we don't have the time, but that is like the meat of what we want to keep going and diving deeper into. Juliana, I want to ask you, because we were talking a little bit about emotional intelligence, and that the role our emotional intelligence plays. So what do you feel what is the role that emotional intelligence plays of our mental space and mental well-being, and why that's so crucial for leadership or entrepreneurship?
Wow. First of all, Brenda, I don't think I was breathing while you were talking. That is so interesting. I'm reading the book by Joe Dispenza, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. Oh my God, it's so good. Emotional intelligence is actually a really hot topic amongst leaders. Even if you are an entrepreneur, of course, you're leading yourself, and how you show up under pressure, how you show up under stress, and all of that. And of course, at the core is self-awareness, but then it's the awareness of others, of the environment, of the situation, of the team. And I love it that when we began, someone put in the chat, sorry, I can't keep up with all the names, being present. So do you remember when you were in school and you had to say presente? Remember that? Presente. And now it's like, how present are you? How present are you when you show up to places? Are you paying attention to all of the nuances and all of these things? I remember that I used to work with this woman, and she was a top performer, go-getter, probably, closet workaholic. Anyway, and one day she came to work and she didn't have any makeup on. First time in 5 years. And I said to her, is everything okay? I mean, you're allowed, but it's a change in behavior. It's a change, something is off, right? And it's up to us to build that bridge of trust, build that bridge and asking the person and open that door for them to share, right? And as women, I feel like we don't necessarily share, and we cover a lot, particularly out there in the business world. We're covering about our families and kids because, we want to blend in, we want to belong, we don't want to be the one asking, we don't want to be the one, again, I'm Latina, I'm loud, I'm Brazilian, I'm this, I'm that. You're looking at my earrings, you're wondering, are they heavy? Is she okay? Can she hear me? The focus is lost on what I'm actually saying and my capabilities. So we cover a lot of things. I remember that growing up professionally, I used to lie about my age. I used to have a phantom boyfriend that never could come to the happy hours because I didn't want to be the single Brazilian in Miami, blah, blah, blah. You see, so all of these things, but I wish that my leader, and I wish that someone had the awareness to see that I was doing mental gymnastics to show up each day and how exhausting that can be, right? In me thinking that I had to be and show up like someone else that I thought was what the idea of success was. And if someone had been tuned in and had done their own calibration, they would have saved me so much of that mental gymnastics, which opens up space for the positive mindset, right? And for us to create and see opportunity and see solution. And imagine all the negative talk that you give yourself in trying to fit into that mold. So anyway, all those things combined, I believe, in a shaker is emotional intelligence.
Yeah. Wow. Oh my gosh. And we're running out of time. So I definitely think, like, even after this, because we're gonna rush through the next, I have like 2 minutes left, not even. But I want to continue this conversation because I think we need to do more of this. So maybe we could do something in the hub. So guys, stay tuned for some more of this, delving into self-awareness and emotional intelligence inside the hub. But I want to end with this last question for you, Brenda. It really, you talked about NLP, but I know we're going to be doing something for NLP, but for the audience who doesn't really understand how it can actually be applied to our day-to-day, besides some of the things that you shared, please share with us just kind of how we can use this, being mindful of our thinking to help impact our day-to-day and our business and our, entrepreneurial ventures.
So I think that everything that we talked about today speaks to, I'm going to put that under the different spokes on the wheel of what I would call NLP, because self-awareness is one of those huge, big things. Emotional intelligence is one of those huge, big things. And then that utilization is also huge. And so when I think about NLP and how we can, well, listen, I use NLP every single day. I mean, I'm like I said, I'm breathing in it every day. And so NLP is not, someone told me once, NLP is not science. I'm like, I never said it was. But it is based, it's a modality that has so much science in it, that has everything to do with how is it that we show up in the world, how we can feel about ourselves, how can we really step into our self-worth, our power, and operate from there. Because a lot of the times we're walking around very disempowered because of all the things, if you think about conditioning, if you think about the unconscious mind, all the things that are programmed in, and that all of a sudden, it's programmed enough, and before you know it, you just call that stuff true. I was almost going to say a bad word. You just say it's true, and it's not true. It's that you've been so conditioned to see it and see it and see it and see it. And so you begin to believe it. And so how NLP, for me, when you think about when I say about that there's a lot of practicality to it, is that models are called something. So we have taken an idea or a concept and created processes for it. And so state management to me is one of those big things. I mean, my life absolutely changed when I learned the power of releasing negative emotions, and that your brain can do that. And it doesn't have to be, listen, I love therapy, and I have clients that have therapy, but man, there is nothing like being able to being able to have the ability that if you're feeling a lot of anger because someone at work just really ticked you off, for you to take 15 minutes and be like, I'm letting this stuff go, and that you can really let it go. It's not like I'm stuffing it down with a glass of wine. It's I'm releasing it from my nervous system, and I'm no longer impacted by it, so that I don't make decisions from there. That to me is one of the biggest ways. For me, state management, NLP and state management, I mean, like those two things together, that just changes the direction of your life when you can apply it really intentionally.
I gotta be honest. I want to go on for like another 20 minutes because I know there is like worthy stuff that's gonna come out, but we are pressed for time. So Juliana, I'll give you a one, like wrap it up for us in 30 seconds or less, how we can like zip that up, and your last points on mindset shift and how it impacts our world.
Well, we're here to activate, right, ladies? So this is all great content, and I'm getting ready to buy books and take Brenda's course because it's also another way of me being very intelligent about procrastinating. So I would like for you to think through what is the one thing that you're going to do differently as a result of our conversations here today in order to really activate and instill that change and be that person that you so deserve to be. But it really starts with what you're doing today. Tomorrow, next week will shape the summer and next year. So really take a moment to self-reflect and that self-awareness of what you're actually going to do.
I love it, love it, love it. Thank you so much, ladies. We got to continue and probably inside the hub, pero I hope you guys have enjoyed this conversation, and I know we're rushed to our next speaker, pero gracias. And
Gracias. Thank you. Thank you.
Gracias.
take care, guys.
Thank you.